Today, we'll be focusing on some game-changing solutions, talking and getting insights from amazing experts that we're going to have on the line, experts in the science and policy of aquatic food. And specifically, we're looking at this as being a contribution to the UN Food System Summit's Action Track 1 on access to sustainable, safe, and nutritious food for all. More on that in a few minutes. My name is Christian Teleke. I am the Global Director of the Ocean Program at the World Resource Institute, and also have the responsibility for the Friends of Ocean Action with the World Economic Forum and the Secretariat for the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. And I'm delighted to be your moderator at this really thought-provoking gathering today. Great to see that we have over 150 participants on the line joining us virtually from around the world. We're going to get to know you in a moment. But first, as always with these virtual gatherings, we want to be sure you understand a little of the housekeeping that's going on, bring your attention to some of these things. I know many of you will be familiar with these. It feels as though that we're on that, the days when we used to travel with plane. Hopefully they again come soon. But that person standing at the front, directing you how to fasten your seatbelt, well, this is pretty much along the same lines. You should all be fully aware of it now. But just so you know, for audience members, your cameras and microphones will be switched off by default. We're going to make this interactive as possible, so we're going to have some Q&A sessions with the panels. Don't wait until these sessions, so I go to the audience for Q&A. Let's get this discussion going and get it moving, in the chat and the Q&A. We have some amazing experts on the line that can answer those real time. As with always these sorts of things, they do take a little bit of time to go through an agenda, and sometimes a little squeeze, we might not be able to get to them, but we'll certainly try. So, but please continue the Q&A in there. Just so you know that from time to time, there are going to be some screenshots taken. There are going to be it's going to be recorded. So your colleagues who are not able to join us today are able to then watch it on their own time. And also recognizing that some of you are up really early and some of you are up really late. You may not make it all the way through, but we certainly hope you do stay with us, and really grateful that you can join us. A lot of this information is contained in the WorldFish Center's newsletter. They're urging you to sign up, and the information on how to sign up onto that is in the chat as we speak, and how to subscribe. So we're going to have a couple of audience polls. We do want you to click on those and give us a sense to get some of your views, where you're coming from. You'll see that in just a moment, but we really want to make this as engaging as possible, and because we know how valuable our time is and want to be sure that you can ask some questions, but also learn a little bit about you as we go along. So just to get us quickly started, I'm going to pass over to Anita Utheim-Iversen, who is the head of the Global Action Network, to give us a few quick introductory remarks to the webinar. So Anita, over to you.
Thank you, Christian, and hello everybody, welcome. My name is Anita Utheim-Iversen, and I'm head of the Global Action Network on Sustainable Food from the Oceans and Inland Waters for Food Security and Nutrition, which is initiated by Norway under the Decade of Action on Nutrition. On behalf of the Global Action Network, I wish you all warm welcome. The mission of the Global Action Network is to mobilize actions to include aquatic foods as key food source for achieving food security and nutrition. We believe aquatic foods will be important in transforming our global food systems. The network will arrange a series of 3 independent dialogues that will connect to the UN Food System Summit, Action Track number 1, 3, and 4, in order to highlight the importance of aquatic foods. The outcome of the webinar is going to feed back into the UN Food System Summit. Game-changing solutions do not have to be about reinventing the wheel, but to set the wheel in motions. So these 3 webinar series will connect and concentrate to how to walk the talk, showcase possible solutions, discuss how to connect research and policy, and how to scale up the good solutions. Today, we are focusing on Action Track number 1, ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all, the main purpose of the food systems. I am so glad so many of you could come, and we have such an interesting group of panelists with us today, and I'm so excited to learn from your experience. And we are very lucky to have Mr. Christian Teleke with us today, and he will guide us steadily through the event. And I hope you all will enjoy the session, and thank you all for joining. I hand it over to you, Mr. Teleke. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Anita. And really important words there. Walk the talk, solutions, incredibly important how we think about aquatic foods and food systems. So first, let's kick off with our first poll. And the first question that we're going to put to you today is, you'll see two questions on your screen. The first question is, where are you joining us from today? Please do just let us know. We're interested to see, where we're coming from. I saw we have people dialing in from Myanmar, Nepal, Turkey, Yemen, Bangladesh, Azerbaijan. Fantastic to see you all joining us. And then also curious, what type of organization do you work for? Government, nonprofit, private sector, academia, research, or perhaps some other institution that you're joining us from. This is just for purely our interest to give you a sense of those on the line and where you're dialing in from. These virtual events are truly amazing. I see we have over 200 people on the line at the moment. Very excited to see where you're coming from and where your backgrounds are as far as this webinar is concerned. So we'll just give it perhaps another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll look at the results and then start getting into some of our other speakers and sessions that were here today. We do hope that this finds you well, wherever it may find you. I know that there are many countries around the world that are still going through very challenging circumstances at the moment. So there we go. Lots of people from Europe dialing in, from Africa, Asia Pacific, North America, Central Latin America. We hope that more of you will join there from those parts of the world. Still a little early in the morning there, so people are just getting up, and I'm sure are going to be joining us for sure. Lots of interest from government, nonprofits, academia, research, and a few private sector people on the line as well joining. So very good. I'm delighted to see we have such a diverse group of people and geographies represented. I see people are saying their hellos and good mornings and good afternoons and good evenings in the chat. Please continue to do so. It's nice to see where you're coming from and the different organizations who are on the line. I think everyone is quite interested in that. So really excited about today. Keep those questions, keep that interaction going. Really excited to hear what you have to say and getting some of our thoughts from our panelists. But let's hear from Odd Emil Ingebrigtsen, who is the Minister of Fisheries for Seafood for the Norwegian Ministry of Trade, Industry and Fisheries. In case you don't know, Minister Ingebrigtsen was appointed to his role in March 2020, but before that has had an amazing career spanning a decade in the private sector, and also has a degree in fisheries economics from Bodø University College. Amazing to have someone in the policy sphere who not only is working hard on these really complex issues and grappling at the policy level, but clearly this is a passion for you, Minister, and an issue that you have a deep and intimate knowledge on. So, Minister, with that, we'd be so grateful if you offer some remarks and reflections to really set the scene for us. So, Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Christian. You're giving me too much credit. I never finished my fishing degree. But that's how life sometimes is. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear seafood friends from around the world, to the Global Action Network, thank you for bringing us together. And thank you for putting sustainable, healthy, aquatic food on the Food Systems Summit agenda. A special thank you to WorldFish for actively partaking in the network and for co-hosting this event together with Norway. We have been tackling the pandemic for more than a year. In fact, I was appointed in my job the same day as the corona effects came into Norway, and we haven't done anything else than being on Teams meetings since then. And the pandemic has affected the livelihoods and food security of millions of people, especially in the developing countries. Even though we still have to stay apart, it's more important than ever to unite. To achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we must end poverty and hunger, ensure food security and health, as well as sustainable food production. We must reduce food loss and waste, take care of our oceans and waters, and of course, much more. There is no easy solution, but sustainable foods from the ocean are an important part of the solution. Sustainable food systems and food security is not just a question of providing enough food, but the right kind of food. Nutritious, healthy, and climate friendly. Like fish, shells, shrimps, seafood, and many more, the pantry of the sea is huge and diverse. There is great potential for increased production and consumption of a variety of aquatic foods. To release that potential in a sustainable way, we have to work together and we have to gain and share knowledge. Knowledge to ensure access to sufficient amounts of aquatic foods, but equally important to ensure that it's nutritious and safe to eat, and that it is consumed as part of a sustainable, healthy diet. A holistic food chain approach is needed from healthy waters to healthy people. Norway is actively promoting knowledge-based, transparent, and sustainable actions. Our Prime Minister is head of the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, and this is a very important issue for our Prime Minister and also for Norway. Norway has also contributed to launch of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. We have to bridge between the various initiatives in the food systems and gain and share knowledge across our borders. This is why Norway initiated the Global Action Network under the UN Decade of Action of Nutrition. Because we are stronger together. Ocean friends and partners across the world, I urge all of you to advocate the importance of putting aquatic foods on the agenda at the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit. As we are sailing through turbulent waters, it is more important than ever to unite. And never to forget the UN Sustainable Goal number 14, cooperation. Through joint commitment and united dedication, we will ensure that aquatic foods can play an important role in food security and nutrition and future food systems. I wish you all the best of luck on this event today, and thank you so much.
Minister, thank you so much for those important words, and really that plea coming from you to ensure that aquatic foods do appear in the UN Food Systems Summit is welcome news, I think, for many on the line. Minister, I know you do have a very busy agenda ahead of you, but I would be remiss if I didn't perhaps ask you, take the moderator's privilege and ask you a brief question, if I may. We had a brief chance before the session got started. You said a little bit about your background and your sort of passion for this this issue, but I think others perhaps would love to hear some of your personal reflections on the importance of the subject today of us ensuring access to sustainable, safe, and nutritious food from all. So, Minister, if you do have the time, just some brief remarks on your sort of personal reflections on this issue.
Well, as you might see, I'm from the very northern part of Norway, a city called Bodø, in the high north of Norway, as we call it. And as I grew up as a child around 55 years ago, I was watching the fishing boats arrive, unloading fish on the docks. And 55 years ago, Norway was a much poorer country than now. And my diet was only local catched fish. And that was before the age of pizza and taco and things like that. And we even didn't have internet or mobile cell phones and all that kind of stuff. But the diet was just local fish and whale, which is kind of controversial other places of the globe. But we have always been dependent on the fish and have been for thousands of years. So, but we never went to bed hungry, but we also knew that not everyone was that lucky. But still today, a lot of people in the world are suffering from hunger and lack of important nutrition in their diets. And this has severe effects, and access to these aquatic foods can actually make all the difference for young boys and girls around the world who suffer from malnutrition and to the society at large. So I'm worried about the lack of attention to the importance of foods from the ocean, and everything that can bring more attention to that we think is very important. So I think we owe it to the future generations to get them to eat some more seafood. And even in Norway, the young generations are eating too much pizza and too much taco. So we also have a national challenge.
Yeah, important. Healthy diets, healthy futures. That is for sure. Minister, thank you so much for your time today, your energy, keeping this issue high on the agenda, and we'll look forward to many more interventions and many more thoughts for you in the time to come. But again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So moving on, another poll, just to, again, keep you warmed up for our panelists shortly to come here. As we move on to the main dialogue, here it is right there, a quick poll. Very important to connect this issue, not only with the aquatic foods and the nutritious diets, but where do some of these other areas do you think we can potentially make some significant gains if we make the aquatic foods more visible on the food systems agenda? You heard the minister say that we need to make sure that it's part of the UN Food Systems Summit agenda. But what are some of those other areas that you think are going to be important for making significant gains if we can really get this, at the center of the food systems agenda? So, just a few more seconds here to see where some of you are landing on this issue. Again, great to see where some of you are coming from. Some really early risers in California. Must be about 4:15, 4 o'clock in the morning there for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see others from various different disciplines and backgrounds. We have some interesting tools in the chat. Great to see this interaction going on the chat before we get into some of our terrific panelists that are coming up. Hopefully you are using social media and also letting the world know about some of these issues and some of the things that are coming up. So love to see, if you haven't done it already, make one final click on the poll, but hopefully we can see the results of the poll coming up in a couple of seconds now. Great, interesting. Okay, so here, look at this. So we see that, 29% of you on the line think that we can make significance of better integration of aquatic foods in the global food systems debate. Extremely important. Also coming up in sort of second there, tied there is improving health and well-being, something the minister just mentioned on SDG 3, SDG 14, and SDG 2. Good to see those are being those connections that are being made there. So, food for thought as we go along, but maybe your view might change towards the end. But otherwise, encourage you to continue thinking about how you can make some of those connections with some of those other issues, and particularly in the other SDGs and these food systems and how they connect for the betterment of people, planet, and economy. So now we get into start on some of the first key discussions. Our first panel on focusing on some of the solutions. You've already heard a little bit about the call for some of those solutions and the need for transforming food systems and aquatic foods to address food and nutritional security. Really important elements that we're talking about here, and the role that aquatic foods can play. We have some, as I said to you, we had some world-class scientific experts calling from different areas around the world in different aspects of aquatic foods and food systems from their different countries and geographies and where they're working. Where we're going to run this now is I'm going to go to each speaker. I'm going to say a few words about them, invite them to say a few words about their own initiatives, which they're having impact on and could be included as far as action track 1 is concerned. Remembering that action track is aims to ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. Keep those questions coming in. Keep the interaction going on. In the chat. I know that I've asked each of the speakers themselves to say a few words, in the chat as well when they have an opportunity to respond to some of your questions. So let's get with our first panelist, Professor Hetty Schonfeld, who is years of experience as a professor and advocate for nutrition research. Her work focuses on linking nutrient quantity and quality of foods to sustainable food systems for attaining food and nutrition security for all. Very important, quantity and quality, two important words that go together there. Professor Schonfeld is currently a scientific advisor to Afro Foods, a network on the African continent, forming part of UNFSS, UNU, and FAO in Foods Task Force. Professor Schonfeld, we're eager to hear about your work, nutrition, and sustainable food systems. So let me hand over to you, Professor Schonfeld.
Hello, everyone. I would like to talk a little bit about the role that aquatic foods contribute to the diet. And we know that it's an excellent source of protein, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, vitamin D, B vitamins, iodine, selenium, calcium, zinc, and iron. and it contributes to food and nutrition security, as well as reducing the risk of micronutrient deficiencies and non-communicable diseases. A need exists for more knowledge on the nutritional composition of locally available food from the aquatic environment, including aquatic plants and byproducts. And we know that food composition is essential for nearly all activities in nutrition, such as the accurate intake data of the population or of individuals, the increased agricultural production policies for nutrient-rich varieties, and also investigating the role of traditional food systems for better nutrition, the development of food-based dietary guidelines, as well as consumer education. But we know that foods are biological materials, and there's naturally a variability in composition, even in processed foods. And for critical components, variability may impact on the sufficiency, deficiency, or excess of an intake of a given component. Species or intra-species variation of nutrient values due to season, geographic origin, production type, cut, preservation state, packaging medium, and preparation methods all has a role to play. And I've compared here the UFish database from FAO with the Norwegian food composition tables, which are quite extensive. And you can see that for moisture, protein, and fat, there's not really that much of a difference. But if we look at cholesterol for king prawn, that really raises your eyebrows to see that there's such a huge variation in values from those two sources. And in the last table, you can see that probably the FAO table did not have values for iron, and we know that iron is a micronutrient of concern. So just to talk a bit about food composition tables, we know that we use mostly a printed form for each country or even regions. We are much more moving towards websites and ebooks and electronic data sets, and I've listed here some that may be useful for you in your particular area, and they're all freely online. So what is the way forward for food composition? It should include biodiversity, because this is important and can have significant effect on data interpretation and on nutritional adequacy of diets. Also, capturing the biodiversity of local foods in dietary surveys will also be an important step towards understanding the impact of biodiversity on food and nutrition security. And computerized food composition databases are the need of the day. They must be able to support complex data analysis, compilation, reporting, and data mining, for instance, to improve recipe calculations, aggregation, compilation steps, plus quality assurance steps. And it should accommodate updates efficiently. Data should also be updated regularly as analytical data becomes available, particularly at the local level. And with that, I would like to thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Schonfeld. Excellent points, I think, on making electronic open access data sets on local foods more available and easily accessible, I think, to understand the relationship of biodiversity on food and nutrition security. This is clearly imperative, especially in developing countries. So this is a nice segue into our next speaker, Merete Tanstad, who is the Senior Program Coordinator of the Ecosystem Approach to Fisheries, or EAF Nansen program, which is an initiative started by FAO to support the implementation of ecosystem approach to management of marine fisheries in developing countries. She works in partnership with organizations from around the world, amazing experience, such as the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, NORAD, be very familiar to some of you, the Institute of Marine Research, regional fisheries bodies, 32 partner countries in Africa and Asia, a huge wealth of experience to bring to our session today. So Merete, love to hear about your work, the impact that the EAF Nansen program is having on aquatic food systems. Merete, over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here today to talk about the work of the EAF Nansen program. So food and nutrition security are key societal concerns, particularly in developing countries. and the contribution of fish to address food and nutrition needs is increasingly recognized. So initiated in 1975, with the aim of studying fishery resources in poorly known oceans, the Nansen program has over time evolved in response to challenges and emerging issues for sustainability of marine resources and ecosystems, but always with the constant core aim of addressing food and nutrition security in developing world. So today, building on 45 years of experience, the EF Nansen program tackles the multiple dimensions of food insecurity by recognizing emerging threats such as climate change and marine pollution. And it is at the forefront of multidisciplinary efforts to support partner countries to improve food and nutrition security through fisheries management, science, and capacity development. The science plan developed under the current phase of the program guides the research work and data collection during research surveys with the program's research vessel, the Dr. Fridtjof Nansen. And for the first time, improving knowledge on the nutritional value of fish and a possible presence of contaminants, including microplastics, is an integral part of the program's work. So addressing food and nutrition security can be best achieved through an integrated and holistic approach to fisheries management. Hence, the Nansen program supports partner countries to implement the ecosystem approach to fisheries as a holistic, participatory, and adaptive management process, using best available knowledge for decision-making, addressing ecological, socioeconomic, and governance aspects of fisheries sustainability. An example of the program's integrated approach is the incorporation of improved knowledge on nutrition and food safety into fisheries management of shared Sardinella stocks in the Northwest Africa region. And Sardinella contributes significantly to the livelihoods and food security of both coastal and inland communities. However, the state of Sardinella stocks in Northwest Africa is worrying, with around Sardinella considered overexploited by the Fishery Committee for the Eastern Central Atlantic. Also, the recently advancing fish meal industry in the region, which targets Sardinella as a major source, has raised concern by increased fishing pressure and shifts from human consumption to industrial processing. So increased knowledge on the benefits of Sardinella to food and nutrition security can contribute to developing appropriate fisheries policy in this regard. And hence this shared Sardinella initiative supports joint collaboration among the partner countries on the management of these resources through a combined regional and national approach to improve support to regional stock assessments, targeted research, and by improving fisheries data and fisheries management processes. And a specific initiative has been developed to collect information on micronutrients, fatty acids, and proteins that fish contain, as well as on food safety parameters, as can be seen on this slide. So what are some of the lessons learned and possible solutions? So it is clear that efforts should continue in addressing food security in a holistic and integrated way. Many local species are important for food and nutrition security, but information on nutritional value is often inadequate. It is therefore important to increase knowledge on nutrient and contaminant levels of local species. The newly acquired knowledge through the Nansen program has a great potential to contribute to the future food composition databases that we heard about earlier as an example, but more attention is needed from a broader range of actors. Furthermore, combining information on nutritional value and food safety parameters in fish with knowledge on abundance of these resources to fight gives a valuable insight to the potential of these resources to fight global hunger and malnutrition. In any case, sustainable fisheries management is required to both ensure the long-term availability of food from the ocean and from optimizing the nutritional benefits throughout the value chain. So by combining sustainable fisheries management with information on fish nutritional value and food safety parameters in fish, fisheries management and policy decisions can become more nutrition sensitive and more efficient. And apologies again for the technical problems. Thank you very much.
Merete, of course, not at all. No apologies required. As I said, we've all been in that position before, but delighted to have your words, and great to hear some more about the interesting work that UNFAO are doing to support partner countries in fisheries management, research, capacity, and development. And I was also struck, that one of your slides there, showed that you're touching on, SDG 1, 2, 5, 13, 14, 17, really, exploring those linkages with some of those other key important SDGs and the targets underneath each of those. So great to have those thoughts. As I said, keep those. Keep some of the questions. Please use the Q&A function. Merete and others will be on the line to answer your questions. We're going to get to some of those in a moment, but please do keep those coming. Our next speaker has also had experience working in fisheries and aquaculture for FAO and other institutions such as the World Bank. And for the last 20 years, Dr. Arun Padiyar has been working for WorldFish in Odisha, managing food system projects in partnership with civil societies and government bodies in India. And before, Arun, I ask you to provide your perspectives on aquatic food systems and approaches in Asia. I do want to recognize, and thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm sure your mind and certainly your heart is with other things at the moment, given what's happening with COVID in your country at the moment. But I know from all of us and on the line that we're thinking of you and India at the moment as you go through this very, very difficult time. But with that, Arun, we'd love some of your thoughts and perspectives on the aquatic food system approaches in Asia. Arun, over to you.
Thank you, Christian. I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak about some game-changing solutions that aquatic foods offer for transforming food systems to ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all. Working with the state government of Odisha in India and USA, WorldFish has successfully improved the access to nutritious fish, which, while boosting the livelihoods of women and the health of children. This success has come by applying nutrition-sensitive approaches to aquatic food systems, which put nutrition and health outcomes at the center. Odisha is a coastal state in eastern India, which has a population of over 45 million, where 34% of the children below 6 are malnourished. Despite its great aquatic food resources, not enough nutritious fish are making it onto the plates of those who need it the most. The state has a massive supplementary nutrition program targeting women and children among the vulnerable communities. By taking a nutrition-sensitive approach, WorldFish has worked at multiple entry of food system from production to consumption to boost the availability, affordability, and access to aquatic foods. We worked with women to promote polyculture of fish in homestead ponds and also community water tanks. This system involved production of both small and big fish in the same pond. This meant more fish to eat and sell, thus boosting both nutrition and livelihoods. Small fish such as mola are extremely rich in multiple micronutrients, which are essential for cognitive development of children and is a superfood in the fight against malnutrition. Our partnership with the state government has enabled women-centric policies and schemes that massively encourage women's self-help groups to take up nutrition-sensitive fish farming, production of hygienic and safe solar-dried marine fish, and its marketing for income generation and household nutrition. Another major win came when the Women and Child Development Department has recognized nourishing value of fish and included it in the state's child and mother feeding program. This program is being piloted in 50 Anganwadi centers, that means child care centers involving 3,000 children, women and adolescent girls in Mayurbhanj district of the state. This project has proven to be a successful way to improve access to nutritious and safe fish, and the government is planning to expand this program further. What led to the success? As much as fish was a game-changing solution, the partnerships across different government departments and technical institutes was another major game changer. The Department of Fisheries, the Department of Women and Child Development worked together to encourage supply and consumption of fish. Another key to the success was the government's partnership with technical organizations such as WorldFish and others to bridge technical gaps and sustain government programs to achieve impacts at scale for state-level transformations. These approaches are relevant to many other states in India in which aquatic food systems are integral for nourishing people and improving livelihoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Arun. Some very interesting points there on the inclusion of safe and sustainable aquatic food based nutrition and state-funded dietary programs that you've highlighted there, especially in children. You know, pregnant and lactating mothers and adolescent girls play such a key role in in their growth and development, and that is evidenced clearly by your work and others, and really important lessons to be drawn upon there. I know, keep the questions coming. I think there's some really interesting questions that are coming up. Also note that some of these the presentations will be made available after this. There's some really rich content that's here, and no doubt you'll want to come back on. So I want to turn to our last speaker in the session, Dr. Antonio Marques, who is a researcher and biologist by profession. He is at the Portuguese Institute for the Sea and Atmosphere, and Dr. Marques works as a project coordinator, developing eco-initiatives, sustainable initiatives for improving the safety and dietary value of seafood across European countries. Antonio, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your work in the production and processing sectors of food systems. Antonio, over to you.
Well, I'm trying to switch on the camera, but apparently it's not working. I don't know why, but I will switch on. Thank you very much, Christian. Okay, there we are. Now we have my picture. I will share the screen first. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for the initiative. Aquatic foods, they really deserve to be in the agenda. They were not in the past. First of all, what I'm going to talk is about an initiative that has been promoted by the European Union and gathers 35 partners from 19 European countries, where they have developed a huge diversity, more than 15 innovative, sustainable solutions for the seafood production and processing that were validated. We are now reaching, this is the last day of the project. So you will hear the specific solutions that were developed for the topic that we are addressing here. The first one that I would like to show is the use of feeds that have natural ingredients that are able to provide that have higher levels of specific essential nutrients that are able to be incorporated in the fillets of fish. We are talking about nutrients that are lacking in the population, in the global population, like selenium, iodine, and omega-3 fatty acids. And this can be added to farmed fish, particularly. The second solution that we have validated from a commercial perspective, I would say, for all of them, it's the reduction of the utilization of sodium in the salting process of processed seafood. We are able to reduce 25% at least for fish pate and also smoked fish. Well, working together with the culinary schools, we have developed tailor-made fish-based dishes for the most vulnerable segments of the population, like children, pregnant women, and older people. These dishes, they not only comply with the nutritional requirements of these target users, but they also use sustainably produced seafood species, and also they are affordable. They have a low cost. Also, another solution that we have validated is an online traceability tool where the different players in the value chain of seafood can add the information from traceability perspective, but it can be all other types of information that become available for the consumer and for all the actors along the trade chain in the format of a QR code. And these can be all linked to a quality certification tool that has been validated in the project, as well as a labeling, quality labeling tool. So this will certainly be useful to ensure the trustness of consumers. And finally, I would like also to show you another solution that has been developed and validated, which is a benefit risk communication tool. This can be used by consumers. It's available in the website that you can see there, and also as an app. It can be used by consumers, but also by health professionals, and the software guides consumers in choosing the best seafood from a nutritional point of view to ensure that they get the higher level of nutrients and ensure the safety aspects as well. But so which are the main impacts of the different solutions that we have validated in this initiative? First, to increase consumer confidence in eating seafood. That's very important. Also to provide transparent, useful and user-friendly information, to promote the sustainable utilization of marine resources, to provide healthy, nutritious, safe, tailor-made, sustainable and affordable seafood products for the vulnerable segments of the population, to strengthen seafood security, and to increase employment in the sustainable seafood production and processing all over Europe in this case, but it can be applied to the global level. But we have also some barriers and policy changes that are required at European level, but also at the global level. First of all, there is a lack of regulations for the utilization of solutions that have been proven to reduce the contaminant levels that can be found sometimes in seafood. There is a lack of a nutritional quality certification scheme in Europe, but it also at global scale for seafood that can also be linked to a trustful traceability and quality labeling to ensure the transparent information for consumers. Also, the revision of maximum levels of nutrients like selenium that are used to fortify farmed fish in feed formulations. Also, there is a lack of compulsory strategies to reduce the levels of salt and sodium, particularly in the seafood sector, where you can find extremely high levels for some processed products. And finally, the improvement of the management tools that are available for harvesting bivalves in production areas. The implementation of buffer zones could be a solution where you can find the safe and healthy seafood while combining with the lowest economical loss for the sector as well. Thank you very much, Christian. That's all from my side.
Wonderful, Antonio. Thank you so much. A lot of really important lessons there, some interesting solutions that hopefully is food for thought on those on the line. I'm seeing some terrific questions that are coming up, in the chat and the Q&A. So please, do keep those coming. And what I thought I'd do now is we do have a few minutes now before we get on to our next panel. So. And I want to keep the pace going here because we have a lot of ground to cover and want to be sure we get to our other panelists as well. But it's terrific, and thank you to our panelists so far for your comments and thoughts. I know everyone is really interested, and you can see that by the amount of traffic that's going on in the chat, and the questions are coming in thick and fast, and hopefully some of you are already answering them. Perhaps I could just come to the panel that we just had now, and maybe Hetty, if I could come to you first, and we have a question here, and the question comes from the audience. It says, in your opinion, where are the biggest gaps in analytical data on aquatic food composition? So what are the gaps, the biggest gaps in analytical data on aquatic food composition? So perhaps a brief response from you on that.
Thank you. I think it became clear from all panelists that we lack reliable compositional data for local aquatic foods, especially for vitamins, but also for minerals, but also as related to minor fish species. This lack of food composition data makes it difficult to calculate the nutrient intakes from seafood and to better integrate fish, shellfish, aquatic plants and byproducts into local in-country policies and programs.
So that's some really important, important points there, and recognizing so you're starting to see some patterns there into the data deficiencies there, and obviously something that we hope could be picked up as far as some of the game-changing solutions and solutions that could be put forward on action track 1, and indeed the other action tracks as well. Perhaps we have time for maybe one or two other questions. Merete, I noticed in your slides, you talked about with the EF Nansen program, you talked about nutrients. I noticed something on contaminants and microplastics. And interesting, I think someone else has picked this question, the question up here. And so the question is, nutrition and food safety are relatively new areas of work in the Nansen program. How is this work organized, and how are the results being made available? So nutrition and food safety are relatively new areas of work in the Nansen program. How is this work organized, and how are results made available? So over to you very briefly, if I may.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Mr. Pilecki. Yeah, so the way that we've been organized is that an expert working group has been established consisting of experts in food safety and nutrition from the different partner countries of the program. So they come together and discuss the different aspects in relation to the data sampled, and they also work together in producing and analyzing the data that become available. So as a result, we have 6 publications by this nutrition and food safety team up to date. And so these 3 last ones, for example, account for the first comprehensive analysis of nutrient composition of commonly consumed fish in countries such as Angola, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka as examples. And I think there are also some examples of these publications provided in the chat. So then contributing to information as Professor Schonfeld referred to earlier. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Merete. And thank you all to our panelists at the beginning here. Fantastic to see the great work you're doing, and really, I think, providing an excellent evidence base, some solutions, some ideas on really why aquatic food systems need to be much higher on the agenda, and given the role they play in our lives and many around the world on a daily basis. So again, thank you so much for those valuable insights. Keep those questions coming. I know our expert panelists are going to be on the line for the rest of the event. And I know that I already see some of them you're targeting specifically for some of the questions. So I know they're going to get busy, typing in those responses and those to the questions and comments that you have there. So some great stuff coming through. So now let's shift gear and think about how the second part of the dialogue, and we're going to look at ways to connect research with policy. Really important that we take in some of these policy and solutions and connecting those to ensure the production and consumption of safe and nutritious aquatic foods becoming more increasingly available, affordable, and accessible to all people, something I think everyone is really concerned on. And you can see a number of those in the chat are talking about that already. We've got a great panel again of people and speakers, from research institute directors to action track leaders and policy specialists, all on the line to give us some remarks. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask each speaker to start us off with just a couple of minutes describing strategies that they're currently implementing or things that they're involved with in their capacities and their line of work. And then we're going to move to a discussion, a little bit of back and forth on some of the ideas, generate a little bit of discussion to ensure that, get some more ideas for ensuring how aquatic foods can play a central part in sustainable food systems transformation. So keep those questions coming through, and we'll be sure to try to pick some of those up in the discussion. But also, I know that many on the line will be eager. Our experts and panelists on the line will be eager to respond to those real time and get some of that information, to you. So let's kick off the program. I'm delighted to have Professor Sisa Rongana, who is the Managing Director of the Institute of Marine Research. Professor Rongana has been involved in marine research for quite some time now. Before joining IMR, she was the CEO of the Norwegian Biotechnology Advisory Board and also taught at the University of Bergen and the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. Professor Rongana, based on your intimate knowledge of a healthy ocean and people, how can we ensure aquatic foods are part of a sustainable and healthy diets for all? Professor Rongana, some thoughts from you.
Thank you, and hello to everybody. I think the best way to keep that interesting question as an action point, we need actually to focus on human health before we start to discuss the ocean. And being a professor, I am always interested in statistics. So I went into the medical records of United Nations medical record system. And if you look at the map related to human health, it's actually very depressing. We are either in hunger state, malnutrition is almost everywhere, or we have overweight. And this combination of medical problem, that will create nationwide problem. And if we then focus on hunger, that's one thing. But if you are going to provide food for the hungry one, you definitely need to think about the health and the healthy diet, the composition. And then we come to, if we are looking for good food, that means healthy food, to combat the health problems, that's actually in every nation nowadays. If you look at the map related to US, you will see that one of the richest nations, they have health problems. That's really combined to hunger. Then we move to healthy oceans. If we are going to make healthy oceans, healthy humans, one thing is to start with managing the ocean. And as one of the previous speakers pointed out, that means value chain thinking. At the Institute for Marine Research, we are very concerned about managing the oceans. And if we start by that, we never ever have to forget that the harvesting of the oceans, they have to be sustainable. But also the way we use equipment to either catch, do aquaculture, they also have to minimize the footprint. And then also, when we have catched or harvested, every time we do something with the fish, that's what I call processing, we need to think about making new processes where there are no waste, and also where we keep track on every single protein or fat molecule, because there are no waste at all in these beautiful raw materials. And then we come back to, if we are going to make a difference, then we have to look at the price tag, because if you are wealthy, you never have a problem if you are using your knowledge. So again, I think we have to make new product related to what I said about keeping track on every single molecule, because here we have to change our mind in the way we are thinking, not only fresh food, but processed food in new ways. And therefore, I'm so keen about the value chain from the ocean into our bodies, and we have to get new products. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Cecil. Very important and wonderful to hear you say about, healthy ocean, healthy humans. I think that's incredibly important, and making sure we understand that that entire supply chain from bait to plate, incredibly important. I want to turn now to Lana Vengenant, who is the vice chair of the 2021 UN Food System Summit's Action Track 2. We heard about Action Track 1. Action Track 2 is about shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. Lana, I know you've kindly agreed to step in for our good friend and colleague Gunhild Storlund, who is the chair of Action Track 2. And I know that Gunhild and others are deep in a meeting at the moment with the other Action Track leaders at the last minute. I know that Gunhild sends her apologies to you all. I know that she would love to be here. But look, we're delighted to have you with us today, Lana. And Action Track 2 is one of the 5 action tracks. We talked about Action Track 1, Action Track 2, but there are 5 action tracks, all interlinked and all have some sort of connection, all of which need aquatic foods to be part of that. And so really this is, this Action Track 2 that you're involved with, Lana, is changing the consumption patterns of consumer demand needed for healthy and sustainable food future. Lana, you had an incredible background in youth food systems movement. You're serving as a Real Food Systems Youth Ambassador, a youth leader in the Act for Food, Act for Change campaign facilitated by GAIN and the Food Foundation. So Lana, focusing on your role as Action Track Vice Chair on the 2 and the Food Systems Youth Ambassador, how can we transition diets towards more sustainable and nutritious food? You heard Cecil talk a little bit about this connection between health and healthy ocean, healthy people. But what are your thoughts on that? Lana, over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I also agree with the majority of the poll responses that we received, where one of the really important outcomes is to have aquatic foods addressed more in the global food systems discussion, which is, of course, something that we're working on over at the Food Systems Summit. I want to begin by highlighting some of the wide range of actors engaged around aquatic foods, from the practices of indigenous peoples to those of local fishers and those also of industrial fisheries, and also the many groups around the aquatic foods discussion happening. from industrial fisheries that are working to protect their interest and profit to small-scale fishers trying to earn a livelihood in the way that they can, and advocates, such as from the International Youth Climate Movement that I'm very familiar with, and also the broad efforts for a healthy and sustainable food system, looking to how we can best uplift ocean, planet, and people, which are, of course, very interconnected. I highlight this because it is important for us to evaluate the backgrounds that we are coming from, the interests we might be protecting, and what assumptions we might hold. We must go into these discussions with an open mind and the genuine intention of finding what is best for health, biodiversity, environment, and human rights. I also want to state that when we speak of aquatic foods, and it has been mentioned a few times, I'm thinking of more than fish, as there's notable potential also in aquatic plant foods, such as seaweed as a part of healthy and sustainable diets that we are looking at, and also a part of healthy and sustainable food system. Of course, I'm joining you here today as Vice Chair of Action Track 2 for the Food Systems Summit, to be convened by the United Nations Secretary General this year. As Gunhild Stordelin, who could not be here with us today, lead of Action Track 2 likes to say, there are 50 shades of animal protein, or in other words, a lot of nuance between factory farmed red meat and locally caught fish. There's also a lot of nuance in fish itself. At the summit leadership, we acknowledge the complexities of our food systems, but also that this must not paralyze us in inaction or keep us in echo chambers. Instead, we must have these discussions and we must take action, fighting against the most egregious and harmful practices such as overfishing and human rights violations, to make space for the best practices and the most promising solutions. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Lana. That is really important. And actually, to have that reminder from you on the importance of this inclusive dimension to this, and looking at the different scales, and also the social dimensions and human rights that you mentioned. Very, very important. And also the point about plants. Of course, we need to think about the full range of the spectrum when we're talking about nutritious and healthy aquatic foods. Terrific to have those thoughts. So thank you so much for that. You also made some really important points on the UN food system's role to advocate for these healthy and sustainable diets, and approaching the conversation is what's best for health of people and planet, and being open-minded and a sort of a genuine intention, for that, which I think is terrific. I think our next speaker can also speak to this, as she's had years of experience working in global health systems in Asia. Naoka Yamamoto, you're the Assistant Director General of the Universal Health Coverage at the WHO. Delighted to have you with us. I know that you've been recently appointed the Chair of UN Nutrition, which is a UN interagency coordination and collaboration mechanism for nutrition at the global and country levels. We're also very excited. I know that the UN Nutrition will be launching a new discussion paper on aquatic foods and sustainable healthy diets in collaboration with WorldFish. And we're very interested to learn about that today. And I wondered, Naoko, if you're able to share maybe just a little bit of a sneak preview or on some things on the key outcomes of that new paper. Over to you, Naoko.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about aquatic food. As you mentioned about the paper of the role of the aquatic food in the sustainable healthy diet, the paper shows for us that aquatic foods offer many potential for making sustainable healthy diet a reality throughout the world, even the low resources settings. And as a Professor Hetty has already said, that aquatic food provide many nutrients, including variable resources, protein, essential fat acid, or vitamin minerals. And it makes them important to the key life stages like pregnancy and early childhood stage. And another point is eating aquatic food is associated with multiple health benefits. And then also scope to address the triple burden of the malnutrition. But on top of it, from the environment perspective, aquatic foods are key for building resilient health system, and they can improve marine biodiversity and water quality. It has a possibility to do it. And also the paper, this document articulated the challenges and the opportunity of aquatic foods, as well as recommended strategies. So maybe we can discuss or during the dialogues. But I think this event is also very important to create a momentum to aquatic food and food system, to the Food System Summit and COP26, to the Climate Change and Nutrition Summit. And so this year is a very special event time. So let me talk about the issues as a chair of the UN Nutrition, but as Assistant Director General of WHO, I also would like to add that because of the COVID-19, we all, global community, understand that One Health approach is important. One Health means health of human, health of animal, including fisheries and also aquatic animals, as well as planet. This is a big point we have to address. Let me stop here and thank you.
Nayako, thank you so much for that. And you've really touched on a couple of key points as well that really need to be brought into the conversation. I think echoing a theme of some of your colleagues talking about this One Health approach, very, very important, but also drawing in the dimension of COP26. We have some big moments this year where food systems, not just in the Food System Summit, but arguably within COP15, the Convention on Biological Diversity in China later this year, COP26, some big moments that we, I think we need to really think about that, that environmental and sustainable component of these nutritious diets. This brings me to our final speaker, who has been involved in aquatic foods, resource management, science, and policy for decades. I'm sure Manuel Barange is known to many of you. He is the Director of Fisheries and Aquaculture Policy and Resource Divisions at FAO, has an amazing background in fisheries science, where his research focuses on the link between climate change impacts and marine ecosystems. Of course, Manuel, you heard Naoko, bring in this dimension of climate change, and we'd love, perhaps some of your thoughts on how your current line of work at FAO. How can we ensure that action is taken in a very sort of integrated, holistic manner that's taking into account the right knowledge, making sure all the elements of food security, are included. We've touched on all parts of pieces of them, different pieces of them, each mentioned by our panelists today. But you're sitting at FAO with looking at all these pieces and trying to sew them together in a very meaningful fashion, and love to have your thoughts on reflections on that. So over to you, Manuel.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for your very generous introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to focus on something specific for this introduction. The nutritional benefits of aquatic foods have been clearly demonstrated today by other panelists. But you may not know that the consumption of aquatic foods has actually been growing at twice the rate of population growth for the last 5 decades. And thus they are making a very net contribution to improving global food and nutrition security already. To give you just one figure, the average per capita consumption of fish has grown from 15.3 kilograms in 1995 to 20.5 kilograms today per person. And the sector continues to grow. FAO expects a 16% growth in aquatic food production by 2030. But we also have a more ambitious projection which aims at achieving 25% growth by 2030, which would significantly increase per capita consumption. This, by the way, is presented in the UN Nutrition report that has just been introduced. But as the COVID pandemic has so painfully demonstrated, predictions and realities are two different things. To achieve such growth, we need strong partnerships, technological innovation, investments, and political will focused on 3 major pillars. Sustainable intensification of aquaculture is number 1. Transformational management of capture fisheries is number 2, combined with the development of fish value chains, including a significant reduction of fish loss and waste. We need to succeed in these 3 pillars if we are to end hunger and poverty while keeping with planetary boundaries. But of course, this is not just about producing more and better, it is also about ensuring equitable access and utilization so that we improve the nutritional benefits for all. A case in point I will leave you with. It is deeply worrying to know that under a business as usual scenario, FAO projects that Africa will be the only continent where per capita fish consumption may drop by 2030, as supply is not expected to outpace population growth. So let's focus on this, how to produce more, how to produce better, and how to make it more accessible to all. Let's talk about how to achieve this. Back to you, Christian.
Whew, wow, Manuel, that's a really important and emotive points that you've just raised there, and some perhaps bleak statistics that we really need to address in the coming years and decade. I'd like to perhaps now open the floor for questions. I see a number of questions are coming through thick and fast, but maybe if I could take moderator's privilege here and maybe pick up on this this last point that you that you made there, Manuel. And I'm going to open this up to maybe get some brief reflections from each of the members of the panel. So again, just some very brief reactions to that first, and maybe if I will come just to you, Manuel, just since you were the last speaker, and then I'll do a tour de table here. You all mentioned that malnutrition has increased in the last few years, and the question is that how can fish contribute to accelerate hunger reduction and meeting action track 1, and who and how can we contribute within the aquatic food area? So I think really you focus on perhaps the last part of that, is that who and how can we contribute to this issue within the aquatic food area? So I'm interested in, who do we need to address that's not part of this conversation already, and perhaps one practical suggestion on how. So Manuel, could I come to you on that first?
Well, thank you. Well, I think that maybe I will focus on the consumer. I think that the consumer has a lot to say and a lot to do, because the consumer nowadays gets very confused messaging when it comes to fish and food security and the role of fish in food security. And this is partially caused by social media and the fact that every opinion has now facts that can be brought to bear, and the consumer gets very confused. And I am particularly interested and worried about climate change. And I think that climate change is going to create a significant change in the distribution of fish species in the oceans. And this is going to interfere with everything: the management processes, the institutional processes, the fishing communities, the markets, the trades, and so on and so forth. And I think that the consumer needs to understand that fish can make a huge contribution to future food security, but we need to eat the fish of the day. Stop going to the fishmonger asking for the fish that you want. Ask him or her, what is the fish that is available today? Because changing that perception, fisheries is the only food production system that depends completely on the natural cycles of life in the ocean and in the rivers. Go and get what is available, and the fishmonger will help. And that, to me, is the first change that we need to effect: consumption and the consumer's change.
Yeah, that's really interesting and important to have that consumer change, but thinking about differently and thinking very practical, some very practical suggestions that are in there, and actually making the demand driven up the supply chain and working with those in the supply chain in order to ensure we're thinking about this both in climate change, but some of the other environmental parameters as well. Now, do you want to come in on that, because that sort of picks on some of the things that you talked about, with the kind of the One Health approach, but these kind of supply chains that are there as well. Do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, but first of all, how we can address the malnutrition issues, especially the vulnerable population. The issues, maybe we have to think about locality and culture and the situation, right? But if the aquatic food is available, that people, we need to promote consumption of diverse, nutrition-rich aquatic food, particularly low-trophic species. But at the same time, we need to think about safety of the food, how to produce, how to consume the aquatic food. And we have many things to do at the governmental level and community level. First, we can create a good guideline for how to consume and how to take a nutritious food. And also, we need to empower community people, not only the women, but the women is very important, but empower people. And we can use some aquatic food in some, especially for a public program, like school foods or food in the hospital and many public area. So we have many things to combine it. But again, we need good information for the people and empowerment of the people who use it.
Yeah, no, very, very important. Cecil, did you want to come in on this? I see your hand up. Please come in.
Yes, I would like to, because I'm very concerned about the health of children. And one thing is what Manuel said about actually let's focus on what's on the fishmonger's plate, or what is he or she providing. That's one thing, but to eat fresh fish is actually too expensive for most poor people. And therefore, I really think that not only do we have to think differently when we are buying food, but we also need to produce processed food that can be stored for longer time. If you think about now the latest innovation, you can make wonderful nutritious products like meal or fats that doesn't taste like fish anymore, but still keeping all the nutrient that we really like to have. And by that way, we open up for bulk products that can be stored for longer time. And if you then really are thinking about what we call byproducts, that's those products that you do not sell at the highest price. That's a wonderful combination. And that makes products that can be so cheap that they are accessible and people will eat it. Thank you.
Yeah, very important. And we see some experiences of people that are coming up in the chat, some very interesting things that people are raising. I'm finding some fascinating reading on there as well. So please do keep those coming in and reflections there. Lana, I'm conscious of, there's been a lot of talk of next generations, younger people, and how do you react to that? I mean, is this something that kind of keeps you up at night, that you're thinking about? How do you mobilize some of these actors, change consumer behavior, thinking about it? I mean, there's a lot on your shoulders, and I just wondered what are some of your kind of brief reactions and thoughts to what you've heard so far?
I appreciate the way that young people have been taught of so far, right? Thinking about the need for healthy diets, also for younger populations, and having young people more informed, more educated, all things that we advocate for. Something that I'm particularly interested in is youth-led advocacy, right? Young people reaching out to our networks, reaching other people in our age group, and really leading these efforts in the way that we can. There's so many young people who are passionate about food systems, who are already doing this work and making a difference, and we really can lead our own advocacy for our generation.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that's inspiring stuff. And I think words for us that we should be really thinking about when we're thinking about the next generation, and particularly, the food and the nutritional food and safety and sustainability of those foods that are being eaten. I'm looking at the time. We have one perhaps brief question here, and I'd like to throw this to you, Manuel, if I may, from the audience. And the question is, a 16 to 25% growth of fisheries consumption will have winners and losers. How do we ensure that the nutritionally vulnerable are the winners and not the losers? Again, we have just a little bit of time left, brief reflections. And if anyone of the panelists want to come in on this really briefly, then I can come to you. But Manuel, some reactions to that. I think it's a very important question there.
Yes, absolutely. I think that when we provide global projections, we obviously are focusing on the global picture, but everything has to be then downscaled to the region. And as perhaps everyone knows, 60% of aquaculture, for example, is produced in a single country. So that gives you both the dichotomy and the difference in patterns around the world, but also the huge opportunity that this brings. Africa, for example, only produces 2.5% of aquaculture production currently. So there's a huge potential there. So that's one thing, is to try to make sure that we try to balance a little bit those winners and losers through investment, through production changes, but also very important through markets and trade. Fish, for developing countries, fish, the net income from fish trade is larger than the income from all other agricultural commodities put together. Yes. So it's huge. So increasing trade and benefiting from that trade is one of the elements to balance these winners and losers.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really important, very important point. And that also speaks to you mentioned briefly about the potential finances and the finance required and the finance opportunities there. And I think I was struck by that was probably the category that was perhaps missing from those in the audience. And I don't know if anyone's there in the finance community in the audience, and maybe you'd like to comment on a little bit on those opportunities that may be sitting in the in the chat, and perhaps provide a little bit of context in that. Do any of the panelists want to sort of a quick reflection on that notion of winners and losers? I want to put you on the spot. No, okay. Please, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our colleague so far has already covered, but I just would like to say that the WHO side, for the nutrition side, first of all, promote small-scale fishery. And we need to think about some system of the financial system or mechanism for the subsidies and many issues, how promote it, because we all agree that the local consumption will be contribute to food security in the context of the issues. Also, I would like to find opportunity to produce innovative aquatic foods products, like unutilized species to such as jellyfish, or because I'm originally come from an island country, so there are many opportunities to use unused species to come up to some products, so the local products. So, but and also we can discuss of the lab-grown fishes to see the alternatives, so on. But we have many opportunities, but we need to create sustainability, affordability, and nutritious safety food. That principle, how to translate the action and policy, that country, region, global level. It's big challenges, but we have many innovative ideas, we think. Over to you.
I love that. Sustainability, affordability, innovation, solutions. I mean, that's absolutely critical. And actually, I saw earlier in our in the chat, way at the top now, I saw that the UNDP is running an ocean innovation challenge that offers some funding to support some of these innovations. And a number of these are coming up now and again. And so I do encourage you to look out for those because they're great opportunities to provide some startup resources and money to get kick off some of these solutions and really translate them into big ideas into these big solutions. Thank you so much to our panelists. Now, it was great to hear some of your thoughts and draw upon your expertise and knowledge. I know that we still have a little bit more time left, and we still have a bunch of questions in there. I can see some of you already typing away furiously, trying to answer some of these questions. So please do feel free to continue to contribute and keep those questions coming in. So now we're coming to the end of our time together. I feel like it never does never enough time to do this justice. With so many interesting ideas and thoughts that we'd love to unpack further and discuss. But what I'd like to do is go to now a special message from Dr. Lawrence Haddad. Many familiar to you, Dr. Haddad is the chair of Action Track 1, as you know, which is the access to safe and nutritious food for all, something that has been at the heart of our agenda today. And as you can imagine, like I said earlier, he's deep in discussion with the other Action Track leaders, with Gunhild, and he's very sorry that he couldn't be here with us today. But he's kindly sent us a message, which we'll play now.
Hello everyone, my name is Lawrence Haddad. I'm the chair of Action Track 1 on ensuring access to safe and nutritious food for all. And my sincere apologies for not being able to be with you today to talk about this vital topic, transforming food systems with aquatic foods. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you via video. I've got 5 minutes and 3 points to make. First, managing aquatic foods properly embodies the true spirit of the UN Food System Summit. It's a multi-win outcome. Aquatic foods are a vital source of nutrition, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, omega fatty acids, really key. They have lower environmental impacts than many terrestrial food systems. They employ many of the world's most vulnerable in a very vulnerable and unpredictable context, and 50% of those involved are women. So if we can get production and consumption of aquatic foods right, then we have the potential to synergistically improve the supply of nutritious foods, lower environmental footprints, generate livelihoods for the most vulnerable, and support female income, which we know is very important to women's agency. Second, aquatic food consumption can be increased within planetary boundaries. This is a big deal. The Eat Lancet report shows us that most regions of the world can increase their consumption of fish to promote health, and they can do it within planetary boundaries. And this is especially true of Latin America and the Caribbean, all of Africa, and South Asia. So not only is there the potential for synergies, there is an actuality. We start from a position of potential to scale the synergies. The synergies can actually be realized. We have space to realize them. Third, how can we raise consumption? Well, we know it's a combination of factors. We know that many people's income is just too low to afford aquatic foods. And Action Track 1, 4 and 5 are working on propositions to change that. We know also that the price of aquatic foods is sometimes too high. Action Track 1, 2 and 3 are working on that, both from the production side and all the way through to the retail side. We know that the demand is low for aquatic foods. It may not be affordability that's the issue. It may just simply be worries about safety, about taste, about a whole range of things. And Action Track 2 is working on the demand side, and Action Track 1 is working on the food safety side. And then, of course, there are worries about sustainability. We can't take it for granted that aquatic food systems will always be sustainable. And so Action Track 3 is leading the way on that. So if done with health, livelihoods, climate, environment, and resilience in mind, increasing the production and consumption of aquatic foods is a true no regrets policy and should be, in my view, one of the key recommendations of the summit. Thank you so much.
So much, Lawrence, for those words. Fantastic to get your thoughts, on this, and it's a nice way to kind of tie this all together, and in our time together that we spent today. We're now coming to the end of our session today. It's been really wonderful to hear these speakers. Incredible to have these thoughts. We've had over 260 people on the line at one stage from all places around the world. Lots of really interesting chat, lots of interesting discussions going on. Questions are still coming up. I know that we're always trying to answer these as fast as possible. I know our panelists are still working hard away at that. And perhaps just a few sort of, maybe 2 or 3 observations for me to wind it up, and then I'll hand over to Anita for some final points. I noticed throughout the conversation that we've had today was really this, and as Lawrence has just articulated there, this multi-win outcome. And that aquatic foods, as we bring them more central into the agenda when we speak about food systems and indeed planetary and human health, we can tackle some of these big issues that so many of us on the line are concerned with on a daily basis, that range from gender, poverty, nutritional security, ocean health, partnerships, production, consumption, climate change, and they really can play a very important role. So multiple wins can be achieved through placing aquatic foods more central on the agenda. Secondly, we heard a lot about the notion of healthy ocean, healthy humans, or healthy aquatic systems and healthy humans. Not only are we talking about fish, but we're talking about other components of this that are coming from the ocean. This One Health approach that Naoko had talked about. And relating on some of my work that I've been involved with the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, which hopefully many have had a chance to look at some of the transformations and the commitments they've made. There's a whole section there on human health as related to food. And you can see that at oceanpanel.org. But in that, there became what become the 3 Ps, as it were, that said that if you effectively protect the ocean, we can sustainably produce from it and equitably prosper. So protect, produce, and prosper, the 3 Ps. Very important, I think, of this, especially as we're going into these big moments, not just the UN Food System Summit later this year, but indeed COP15 is going to be dealing with biodiversity. We know that a number of you have mentioned the importance, especially Hetty, Schonfeld mentioned this as well. And then COP26, obviously the role that aquatic foods can play, and not only in reducing the effects of climate change, but also the important role that's going to play in our diet, going forward. And then finally, this has really been about solutions, very important point, but we need to make sure that we're making the financing available so that they can be scalable, they can be translated and in different geographies and different jurisdictions in order to make them viable to address some of these critical solutions, or at least some of these critical issues that the solutions that provide. And indeed, that's good. So it then becomes good for people, planet, and economies. Very thinking much this people notion. And Lana very pointing out to us and reminding us about the social dimensions of this. Very much important to be inclusive of human rights, some of these issues that I know are extremely important to some of these aquatic food systems and the work that's going on around the world. It's been a fascinating time with you. I've really enjoyed this session. I wish we could have spent more time together to go into greater detail. I know that many of you are joining us from around the world. It's either really late for you or still early morning. But we hope that you have found this very much enjoyable, and looking forward to when we meet next time. Next time, hopefully, look out for the Virtual Ocean Dialogues that'll be hosted at the 25th and 26th of May. There will be a special UN Food System Summit session dedicated to that, that we know that the World Economic Forum, the Friends of Ocean Action, the UN Foundation and the government of Norway are working hard on to, again, keep this momentum going and keeping the aquatic food systems at the center of the food systems discussion. So with that, it's a big thanks for me. Thanks to all our speakers. Thanks to the organizers. And I'll hand over to Anita for some final words from you. Over to you, Anita. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for your excellent summary and closing remarks. On behalf of the Global Action Network, thank you all for joining. It has been truly a really interesting and inspiring session. And we will make sure to make a good report of all your inputs and submit it to the Food System Summit. Thank you to our Minister of Fisheries and Seafood for your fine opening remarks. And thank you to the panelists for generously sharing your time and expertise. And thank you to the participants for being very active and providing important inputs in the chat. I also wish to thank Mr. Lawrence Haddad for your truly inspiring special message. And once again, thank you to Christian Telecki for guiding us steadily through it all. I also wish to thank the network task force participants from WorldFish, IFAD, and the Netherlands for your excellent contributions in preparing this interesting program. And finally, a special thank you to the fantastic team at WorldFish and the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research for taking care of all the technicalities. The Global Action Network will arrange a second independent dialogue on the 20th of May, also co-hosted by WorldFish and the Norwegian leadership of the network. It is entitled Transforming Food Systems with Aquatic Foods, Scaling Up Sustainable Production Solutions. You will find information about this on the Global Action Network website, and watch out for emails. You are all welcome to join us. It has been a pleasure being with you all today, and thank you and bye-bye.